Hello, listeners. It's Monday, March 3rd, 2025, and this is Voice Over Work, an audiobook sampler. Where do you listen? In a world ravaged by climate change, where once thriving nations crumble, a sinister plan unfolds. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the thrilling audiobook A Quiet Strategy by Mark Gray. This thought-provoking story delves into a covert global agenda orchestrated by powerful nations as they quietly relocate millions of displaced people under the guise of addressing declining populations. Available on Amazon, and with the audiobook available on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible, this is a must-listen for fans of suspenseful and action-packed storytelling. Join Aiden Lawson, a dedicated civil servant who stumbles upon a shocking truth as he navigates a world of deception, political intrigue, and high-stakes espionage. In a world teetering on the brink of environmental collapse, the lines between truth, manipulation, and survival blur. A Quiet Strategy follows Aiden Lawson, a dedicated civil servant whose job is to draft policies for a government hiding a dark and dangerous secret. When Aiden stumbles upon evidence of a covert plan to relocate populations due to climate change and control migration through controversial strategies like cloud seeding, his entire worldview begins to unravel. As he digs deeper into the government's hidden agenda, Aiden realizes that what he's uncovering isn't just bureaucratic policy. It's a massive conspiracy designed to reshape society for the benefit of the powerful few. With moral boundaries tested and his trust in the government shattered, Aiden's growing awareness of the truth sets him on a dangerous path, one where his life, career, and the future of millions hang in the balance. Alongside Emily, a fellow civil servant who shares his doubts, Aiden begins to question everything: his role in the system, the ethical compromises made for the sake of national security, and his own personal beliefs. But as their relationship evolves, the lines between personal loyalty and professional duty blur, creating tension and distrust. Aiden's attempt to expose the truth puts both his life and the lives of those closest to him at risk. Betrayed by someone he trusts, Aiden is forced to go underground, fighting for survival as the truth begins to leak out. The revelations spark massive civil unrest as the public begins to confront the reality of what has been hidden from them. The world is plunged into chaos as governments scramble to maintain control, while activists and ordinary citizens demand accountability. Aiden, once a cog in the machine, becomes the symbol of resistance, a voice of truth in a world suffocating under the weight of lies. Despite facing constant threats, Aiden's commitment to exposing the truth never wavers. His journey is one of sacrifice, love, betrayal, and hope, but also one of realization that change is never easy, and sometimes the fight for justice requires more than just revealing the truth. It demands unwavering courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to stand firm in the face of overwhelming opposition. By the end of A Quiet Strategy, the world is forever altered. The government's deceptive tactics are laid bare, and society begins to reckon with the truths that were once too painful to acknowledge. But as Aiden and Emily's relationship deepens, they must also confront the reality that no victory comes without cost. Even in the face of civil unrest, new alliances, and public outrage, the question remains: will their actions lead to a better world? Or will the forces of power, greed, and fear prove too strong to overcome? In this gripping tale of corruption, resistance, and the search for truth, A Quiet Strategy explores the consequences of hiding the truth for too long, and what happens when one person decides to risk everything to make the world face it. The gray light of a clouded morning seeped through the blinds, casting muted patterns over Aiden Lawson's desk. Rows of file folders sat beside his laptop, each one a shade of monotony he had come to recognize intimately. It was the middle of the week, the time he often thought of as the lull, too far from Monday to dread, too distant from Friday to anticipate. Yet, something felt off this morning. A small detail he couldn't put his finger on had lingered since he'd read over the day's report summaries. A detail he couldn't ignore. His brow furrowed as he flipped back to the immigration policy overview his team was expected to analyze and file. Words like restructure and projected relocation had never sparked his attention before. But today, they hovered, nudging a sense of unease into his thoughts. As a civil servant, his job wasn't to question, but to process. He processed numbers, strategies, protocols, all without attaching faces to them. Yet, this morning, he found himself wondering about the faces behind these numbers, the lives whose entire world would be shifted under these innocuous terms. Restructure sounded harmless enough, yet it could mean uprooting families, even whole communities. For the first time, the detachment he relied on to do his job with efficiency felt shaky, fragile even. Aiden sighed, leaning back in his chair and running a hand through his hair. He pushed the thought aside. It wasn't his place to speculate. He was here to do his job, after all. The role of handling the policy with quiet precision suited him. He was the one who put things in order, not the one who picked them apart. Just as he was settling back into his work, a report landed in his inbox. He opened it, already poised to skim through the contents as he did with countless others. But the words caught his attention. Population Distribution, Western Contingency Plan, 2028. He scanned the document, eyes narrowing. The policy outlined projected shifts in population demographics, with a specific emphasis on Africa and the Middle East. Entire regions were listed as uninhabitable in future projections. Aiden felt a familiar wave of unease, though this time it was deeper. The numbers spoke to a future he hadn't considered, a world where displacement and forced migration would be inevitable, under the guise of contingency planning. Population movement planning, he murmured, tasting the words, feeling their sharp edges as they cut into his sense of routine. Before he could think too deeply, a voice startled him. "You look lost in thought." He looked up to find Emily Harper standing by his desk. She held a cup of coffee, the slight upward tilt of her mouth revealing a half smile. Her eyes, however, held a sharpness, as if she could see straight through him. Emily, right?" He managed to recover, sitting up. "We met at last month's briefing?" She nodded, her gaze lingering on the report in his hands. "You don't usually seem this pensive, Lawson. Is something on your mind?" Aiden wasn't one to discuss his thoughts openly, especially not with someone he barely knew. But something about Emily's presence, her ease, the way she seemed comfortable in the realm of questions rather than answers, encouraged him. "It's just, I've been noticing a lot of phrasing in these reports lately. Makes you wonder about what's really going on with these contingency plans." He caught himself. Not that I mean anything by that." She raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "Nothing wrong with being curious, but remember," she said, lowering her voice, "curiosity in our line of work can be a dangerous thing." He chuckled, but Emily's gaze stayed serious. For a moment, Aiden felt a shiver, a feeling of standing at the edge of something larger than he understood. He looked down at the report again, feeling the weight of her words. Aiden spent the next few hours trying to shake off the unease from his conversation with Emily, but the lingering questions continued to needle him. Every report he glanced through seemed to take on new meaning under the shadow of that conversation. He found himself scanning phrases he'd normally overlook, language about strategic relocation efforts and targeted migration, words that, while harmless on paper, began to feel loaded with hidden meaning. For years, Aiden had approached his work with a strong sense of neutrality. The guidelines were simple: keep an objective distance, stick to the numbers, and never read too deeply into the politics behind policies. He had built his career on this foundation, but today, it felt unstable. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a co-worker glancing his way. Steve Bennett, head of policy research, was observing him with an expression that was hard to read. Aiden quickly turned his focus back to his screen, trying to dispel any notion that he might be questioning the content of these documents. Even his subtle curiosity could be dangerous, especially in a place like this. Aiden found himself back at the coffee machine, a convenient retreat from his desk and the growing pressure of his own thoughts. The clatter of cups and low hum of conversation filled the room, creating a rare oasis of normalcy, and then Emily reappeared, as if she'd been waiting for just this moment. "Funny, isn't it?" she said, filling her cup beside him. "How the simplest words can carry so much weight." Aiden raised an eyebrow. "You're awfully cryptic for a policy advisor." She smirked, the faintest edge of mischief in her eyes. "It's a habit that helps in this line of work. Sometimes the people who see through the lines are the ones who need to be the most cautious." "Well, what are you suggesting?" he asked, his voice careful. She took a sip, watching him over the rim of her cup. "Oh, I'm not suggesting anything, just thinking out loud." Her voice dropped a tone lower. "You seem like someone who thinks beyond the numbers, that's all." Aiden's hand paused over his coffee. "And what about you? Are you here for the numbers?" Emily hesitated, just for a second. I'm here to make sure things stay in balance," she said, the answer almost too diplomatic. He could see her guard was up, and he realized that they were both navigating a precarious line. They weren't just colleagues discussing work. They were two people surrounded by secrets, wary of showing their cards too soon. Returning to his desk, Aiden couldn't help but notice that Emily's words had sparked something in him. Balance, she had said. But whose balance? And at what cost? Aiden's fingers hovered over his keyboard. His mind was churning now, no longer content with just passing these phrases by. He searched the system for archived reports on migration and climate data, curious to see what patterns emerged, and sure enough, the trends were there. Increasing drought projections in sub-Saharan Africa, temperature spikes in densely populated areas, the undercurrents of a strategy. Terms like redistribution of resources and population realignment kept popping up. The implications started to form in his mind, both chilling and vast. Suddenly, a document with a bright red restricted access label appeared in his search results. He stared at it, a part of him wanting to click, another part knowing it would be crossing a line. But curiosity gnawed at him, a pull he couldn't ignore. Before he knew it, his finger hovered over the mouse, but he stopped, shaking himself out of it. The consequences of accessing something beyond his clearance weren't worth it yet. Instead, he saved the search data, making a mental note to revisit it. He could feel something stirring in him, a need to understand, to piece together the larger picture he'd barely glimpsed. As the day wound down, Aiden's mind refused to let go of the pieces he'd gathered. He made his way home, the routine of his daily commute feeling distant, disconnected. He was on autopilot, yet hyper-aware of the questions he was carrying. Why now, after years of routine, did he feel this drive to look deeper? He entered his apartment, setting down his bag and loosening his tie, all while replaying the day in his mind. Emily's words echoed back at him. Was she just as caught up in these questions? Or did she know more than she let on? Her guarded tone hinted at experience, a layer he had yet to see. It fascinated him that she seemed so at ease in a world filled with contradictions, while he felt unsettled by the smallest signs of inconsistency. He poured himself a drink, sitting down with his laptop to look over the saved data from his search. He knew he shouldn't be doing this outside of work, but he needed answers. He combed through statistics, graphs, and projections. What emerged was a strategy that was slowly, meticulously relocating people, an entire ecosystem of controlled migration, justified under the pretext of global stability. Later that night, as Aiden stared at the ceiling from his bed, he found himself at an impasse. Part of him felt foolish for looking deeper, but the other part was intrigued, driven by a spark he hadn't felt in years. If the government was operating under a quiet strategy, as he suspected, what did that mean for the people, for their rights and choices? He couldn't get Emily out of his head either. She seemed to know more, or at least suspect more. He made a mental note to find a way to speak with her again, to see if she was a true ally, or simply another player in this quiet game. But as he drifted into a restless sleep, Aiden knew that his world had already changed. He wasn't just a cog in the machine anymore. He was a man armed with questions. Questions that were too big, too dangerous to ignore. Aiden wakes the next day, a sense of purpose simmering beneath the surface. He heads to the office, bracing himself for whatever lies ahead, already feeling that he's stepping onto a path that will unravel everything he thought he knew about his work, his government, and himself. Will you stand by as humanity becomes a commodity? Or will you take action to expose the truth? The choice is yours, but the time for change starts now. Visit your preferred audiobook platform today and immerse yourself in this gripping tale of conspiracy and sacrifice. Don't miss out on this opportunity to uncover the secrets that could shape our future. Thanks for joining us for this audiobook preview, and we'll see you next week with another book for you to consider.